Certainly to me, it looked like laughing at, but I mean, I wasn't in the room, so I can't really comment. But I think the significance is that, these are world leaders and top officials from around the world, clearly, in my opinion, not paying very much attention to, or at least not seriously, to what the President of the United States has to say. And I think that's a pretty strong indictment of his presidency.
Brett, for investors that are watching the various trade fights and negotiations going on between Canada and Mexico and Europe and China, is there anything to take away from the president's posture toward the rest of the world in today's UN speech?
I mean, I think on one area where
that was to Brett. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh. Well, that's okay. I think that's one area where the foundation, Heritage Foundation, and the administration deviate is on the trade policy. We believe in free market principles, and we think that engaging with other countries is a mutual benefit to the American people and to the countries that we engage with economically. So we would actually like to see the administration temper down that rhetoric in quite a bit of ways. That being said, on the OPEC comments earlier during the speech, there's no doubt that the OPEC nations manipulate the prices of oil through the production, and having a more free market approach to the price of oil, I think, would benefit consumers around the world and also lead to economic growth more broadly.
Jacob, what do you make of the possibility that this is all just part of his posturing, his negotiating tactics from the president? We've seen pretty overt displays from him at big group gatherings in the past, whether it was G7, G8, the UN today. Do you think the more important thing is the bilateral meetings, or do you think the tone we saw today is indicative of the conversations he's having behind closed doors with leaders as well?
Well, I certainly hope not. I mean, we're going to have a number of very important bilaterals, not least with the Japanese Prime Minister Abe coming up. But, I mean, so far, I have to say, I mean, if he was really serious about the OPEC and the oil price, it's very clear that the main reason the oil price right now is going up is because of the threat of U.S. sanctions, which obviously he has instituted. So he could do something about that right away, but obviously he doesn't want to. But quite frankly, has he succeeded in his bilateral diplomacy with the rest of the world? In my opinion, no. He has gotten, sort of the Korea Free Trade Agreement 1.1, which is very similar to the one he had before. He has pulled out of other international agreements. He doesn't have an agreement with the two NAFTA countries yet, so he has precious little to show for his otherwise often touted negotiating skills.
He does, Brett, though, have a very strong economy, and the numbers just keep coming in, and they're better. Today's consumer confidence was a highlight. How much leverage does that give him on the world stage when it comes to these trade negotiations or making demands from OPEC, for instance?
Well, it's always better from a negotiation standpoint if you're dealing from a strong base. The U.S. economy has been growing. The unemployment rate is very low. The U.S. Business confidence level, as you mentioned earlier, is very high. Now, the president, the other commentator mentioned that oil prices are in some way linked to the sanctions that we're imposing on Iran. The oil sanctions don't go in until November. The sanctions right now are on currency and other commodities, gold and so forth. So this is not directly linked. I think it may be in anticipation of that, but you have to understand that the United States is looking at Iran as a very serious threat outside of the economic realm. It has, as Special Advisor Brian Hook mentioned the other day at the Hudson Institute, has identified not only the support for terrorism, the nuclear program, Iran's continued pursuit of that, its ballistic missile program. All of these things are tied together, making Iran a very serious threat to the United States, to regional allies of the United States, and also a source of instability within the region. These things have to be dealt with, and if that results in an impact on oil prices, that's something that needs to be dealt with separately through increases in production, perhaps through other members of OPEC, or in the United States itself, which is going to be a response to higher oil prices.